Welcome back. Now this, Customs and Border Patrol sources telling Fox that nearly 120 Chinese nationals illegally crossed the San Diego border on Saturday alone this weekend. 120 of the nearly 50,000 Chinese nationals that have entered the U.S. since October of last year. More than 30,000 of those crossings have happened in California. Nearly 9,000 migrants from India and nearly 8,000 Turkish migrants have also crossed the San Diego border so far this year. Meanwhile, House Republicans are now demanding answers after two Jordanian nationals who were in the U.S. illegally attempted to breach the Quantico military base. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan sending a letter to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas asking about the men's immigration status and processing history. Joining me now is Florida Congressman Carlos Gimenez. He is a member of the House Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Select Committee on China. Congressman, what is going on? I mean, 30,000 Chinese nationals in the country, 50,000 rather, just since October, 120 coming just Saturday alone. You've got people touring the trying to get into the Quantico military base from Jordan. Where is the security in this country?
There is none. And look, those numbers that you have right now are the ones that we know, the ones that were apprehended, right, and then they're released in the country with a really low vetting process. But how about the 2 million people that got away that we don't even know who they are or where they came from or why they're here? That's why, you know, FBI Secretary Christopher Wray is so concerned about national security, and he points right at the southern border as the cause of that concern.
But I don't understand why nothing is being done about it. I mean, you've sent letters. Your colleagues are talking every day about these gotaways, about the wide open border, and yet it just keeps happening. There's absolutely no accountability whatsoever for the Department of Homeland Security. And people are demanding answers. I want to know why.
Well, so do we. But, Maria, the problem is the President of the United States. The President of the United States is supposed to hold his departments accountable. We're supposed to hold the President of the United States accountable also. But, you know, the Supreme Court says that our only recourse is impeachment. Well, we've impeached, you know, Alejandro Mayorkas, and then it got to the Senate and nothing came of it. And so when that happens, the administrative state knows that a lot of them, they can just ignore Congress, the will of the American people. We need a new president. That's why this will stop as soon as Donald Trump becomes president of the United States.
What an incredible moment, and the vulnerable position, the vulnerability that this administration has left America in. It's just devastating. Now we've got this story. Members of the Cuban Communist Party, Cuba, were given a 5-hour tour of some secure areas of the Miami International Airport last week. Why? Reportedly getting a chance to see a security checkpoint, a baggage screen area. A TSA official claims that the tour was about, quote, promoting civil aviation security. What the heck does that mean, Congressman? I know you and a group of Florida lawmakers sent a letter to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas about this, pointing out that the administration also allowed Cuban delegations to tour a U.S. Coast Guard headquarters last year. The mayor of Miami-Dade County writing this on X. Department of Homeland Security, TSA, and the State Department all apologized for the incident and committed to changing their protocols. Congressman, what the heck is going on here?
No, they didn't, but they didn't promise not to do it again. That's the problem. Look, I don't believe what TSA has reported. I think they went into actually much more sensitive areas because we have information from inside that that's exactly what happened. Now, get this. Cuba is on the list of the state sponsor of terrorism. And so here you are, you have officials from a state sponsor of terrorism being given access to our most secure areas that protect us from terrorism, and they're being given access to it. Now, Cuba also is really well known for selling those secrets and for being, you know, an agent of other terrorist groups. Like they're an ally of Iran, of Russia, of China, of North Korea. You don't think they're telling them our security procedures and our security equipment? It was unbelievable. And you know, the explanation from TSA doesn't make any sense, and it's actually inexcusable.
Well, who authorized this? And why aren't we hearing anything from Democrats? Okay, why do Democrats turn a blind eye when it has to do with Alejandro Mayorkas or anyone in this Biden cabinet?
Because they are partisan, and that's it. They will do everything to cover up the incompetency of this administration. This administration is compromised. And look, here it is. If you're an enemy of the United States, this administration is going to treat you really well. If you're a friend of the United States, they're going to treat you horribly. And that's just par for the course for the Biden administration, and Joe Biden in particular, for the last 50 years.
So just to be clear, we shouldn't expect any accountability here. They just keep rolling over and allowing people, enemies of America, to come in and look at our most secure areas again, and there will be no accountability. You tried to impeach Mayorkas, it failed. So we should just accept it.
All right. No, you don't accept it. You need a new president. You need to elect Donald Trump as the president of the United States, and when that happens, all of this would change. All of it will change because he's going to be in charge of the administrative state. Right now, Biden's in charge of the administrative state, and they do what he wants them to do, and there's very little that we can do in Congress to stop it. And so, again, I keep saying, look, it's about the presidency. It's about electing a new president, and Donald Trump will stop all of this on day one.
Well, we should point out that the former president has endorsed you for re-election, writing on Truth Social, quote, as a career firefighter. Carlos has spent his life putting out the flames of dangerous fires and the flames of the dangerous Biden administration. Congressman, congratulations. What do you want to say about Trump's endorsement?
Thank you. Well, I'm very proud to have the president's endorsement. I was one of the first to endorse him for president, but look, I'm really proud that President Trump endorsed me, and again, I'm very grateful for his endorsement. Now, America needs to go out, and we need to change presidents. We need to change the direction of this country. We need to get back on the right track. We need to put America first, and we need to elect Donald J. Trump as the next president of the United States. It's
all just extraordinary, Congressman. It really is. We're going to keep a spotlight on it, as you know. It's good to see you this morning, sir. Thank you. Congressman Carlos Gimenez.
Likewise.